Hi again, fam. This is another episode of For Creators by Creators. We are a place for content creators and musicians, artists of any kind to gather, to connect, to resource share, and to illuminate the way to get your art seen, to get your art paid, and to protect your art ultimately. We want to create a community of people that have gone through this before or are going through it together and are able to lift each other up and make the journey that much more enjoyable. My name is Jess. I am your host, and I am so grateful to be back in the studio today again because we have such a great guest. I can't wait for you guys to meet this incredible human being. Today we have Ayla El Moussa. Hi, babe.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm amazing. I can't wait.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much for being here. So your story is so remarkable. It spans so many different types of content creation and visibility and medium and dynamic and dimension. And for the audience that is watching, if you haven't already come across Ayla's incredible work, she is a studio artist. She is a multi-dimension, multimedia creative. I would like to, if we can, since there's so many good things in your journey, I'd like to just kind of dig right in if we can.
Yeah.
Let's go to the beginnings. Let's go to the earliest days of your journey as an artist. What kind of informed your creative personality, your temperament, your vision? And then when were the first days that you started putting that work online?
Oh, amazing. That's a great question. I feel like most artists, we've always kind of been, or I like to say I have always been very right-brained. So math, spelling is just not my forte. I just kind of bleed creative thought process. I would say it definitely was because of my parents. They really are, both of them are really artistic in their own way, but the way that they kind of raised the family was through a non-traditional, I would say, education system. I grew up on Vancouver Island on this like tiny little farm, literally in the middle of nowhere. So there was just oodles of time to kind of wander in the mind and play in the forest and, you know, be with the ponies and the chickens, and which was really great. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the nature element came in. And then the water, which you'll see is like so predominant in the work, just because I was on an island. So anytime I needed to leave, I had to see water and be around water. And then the kind of astrological Cancerian also informs all of that. And then I would say my canvas, like my baseline is photography. And that was very much informed by my dad. He bought me my first camera, you know, he showed me how to use it. And he's an incredible photographer himself. I would say like my whole family is in a way, because he's just really given us that runway and that leeway to take the camera and create. And what was so interesting is because I was painting, I went through a Waldorf system, which is sort of this very eclectic way of teaching and learning, and it's really creative based. So I was doing painting and woodwork and knitting and all this kind of really interesting different like crafts.
And this is during your like early education, right? The Waldorf system is how you were. Okay.
Totally. So it's early, like I would say from kindergarten to grade 8.
Okay.
Homeschooled for a little bit in Kuwait by my mom, which was really amazing. But I was never able to translate my paintings really like from my mind to the canvas really well. I wasn't able to kind of create that fantasy. But once photography kind of came into my arsenal, game over.
Game over.
Game over, yeah.
Was there ever a moment when you were putting that content online and saw either just a huge uptick in sales or saw more feedback from the people that were in your network about what they wanted to see? Like, how did that play out in your art development?
Interesting. So early days Instagram, like I want to say what, 2012?
Yeah.
Was it 2012, 2011? There was like a really great visceral response. And it wasn't even a considered business. Like it was still like I was in university, you know, doing my essays, and then Instagram came along, and it was really great because there was this super authentic like connection. I've met some of my most incredible friends and like collaborators through just that natural, like I don't think there was even DMs back then. It was just we were commenting on each other like, hey, let's meet. Here's my phone number. But the response between me just sort of like messing around and being like, let me share this with the world was great. And you could see kind of the comments and the feedback that people would give you was awesome and really sort of started to inform. But I would say I kept things separate. I kept my like artistic creative, which is what I built in Web3, which we'll get into, that sort of very Ayla style or aesthetic. And then my kind of, I would say, product photography, the way I kind of was making money, if you will, before I became an artist.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that was just another game-changing tool that technology had.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to go back a little bit because there's a few questions that just came up, but I don't want to jump ahead. So you do have such a unique style and it's gorgeous. And obviously it's at this point, it's leveraging so many different types of tech and medium and visual styles. But can you walk us through the development of your actual artistic style?
Yeah.
And maybe to your point that at some point, in order to make money, you were doing it for brands as a photographer before you were able to really focus on Ayla's work, right? And having that be marketable and monetized. So can you just walk us back a little bit?
Yeah. What I like to say is that I'm not a model, I'm not a photographer, I'm not a videographer, but I'm basically a hybrid of all of those. I'm not a painter. I'm just like this kind of satchel of things that I have kind of pulled along the way. It all starts with photography. So how it all began was very much photos, taking photos with models, you know, doing all of those exchanges. And the development of the aesthetic, I would like to say, just kind of the things I found interesting. So if I was into lighting, I love to deep dive. And I think one of the most incredible things that we get to do as sort of like self-employed artists is research.
Yes.
So if I was into lighting, I'd kind of be like, okay, let me look at this Helmut Newton photograph. Let me look at this Caravaggio painting. Let me see how, you know, Botticelli lights the nude when she's laying like this. Let me look at the Guy Bourdin, how he puts, you know, the lighting from the right. So that was kind of how I began. I think research is what has always informed me. And I would say from the past, like pulling from the greats. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. You pull elements that you like and, you know, make your own smoothie with it, if you will. And then I started to work with Photoshop. Photoshop was game changing because you could collage and you could add these different moments. And then the aesthetic of Ayla, that sort of very quintessential, moving, surreal wave, was through a lucid dream.
Really?
Yeah. So I was laying in my bed. It was one afternoon and I had dozed off. And I'd been working with waves and the body, but it wasn't moving, and I was trying to figure out how do I make something that really just makes my heart stop, kind of. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, that's it. And that's sort of how that all began. And then it really took off. Again, Instagram, it was just posting these different, holed up in my studio, just making tons of these videos and just working and putting them out, sharing it. And then the brand started to come along and be like, okay, you know, we would love to work with this, you know, with this shoe brand. We would love to do this with this beauty brand. And I was really, I would say, precious with who I worked with and who I shared that element of the art. But the brands that I worked with were incredible. I would say a huge shout out that I would give to is Jenna Cavello from Agent Nature, who's this incredible organic beauty brand. But she really kind of gave me this confidence because she's an amazing businesswoman, and she's like, you need to just really step into your power.
Yeah. Oh, I just got chills. I love it when women help each other do that.
But not with no bullshit. Just actually she really cared about where I was going. So she was like, keep that as your thing. You know where you're going, and then you'll get there.
And she saw it for you. I think a mentor, when they're able to see not just potential, not just, oh, I can plus up these parts of this person and teach these things and they'll be better. It's like, no, I see you already as that further along version of yourself. Yeah. And all I'm doing is trying to be a catalyst to help us get there. That's so invaluable in this world. Please keep going.
So amazing. And that was all through Instagram. I loved her brand. I'd been using her brand. It was one of those casual DMs where I was like, hey, I love your brand. And we ended up working together and we created this just amazing friendship from working and hanging out together. brands were starting to engage. And I've always been very stubborn and very firm that I was going to be an artist and a creative, and I was not going to work a 9 to 5. Just not going to happen. And I kind of did everything in my power to just stay afloat. I was designing album covers and just doing random shoots here and there. And all along the side, I knew that my artwork would be on a screen. Not on a TV screen, but the world would view my moving artwork on a screen somewhere. I just knew that was coming. And I would ask anybody and everybody, like, hey, like, how do I code my artwork onto a screen? How do I do this? Da 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 da. And then 2016, found this company, art.com, that had created this Clio screen, I think it was called. They were way ahead of their time. Like, it was insane. The clunky screen, but the technology was amazing. And they were working with creatives to have their art programmed onto this TV screen that they would sell as an art. Kind of like a prequel to the Samsung art screen, to the Danvers screens that we have now. Worked with them, and then I kind of knew something was coming. It was like, you know, when you feel something as a creative, like you kind of have your nose to the ground, kind of like a truffle pig, right? Like you're just like, I know there's some magic coming, and you just sort of keep digging and keep like doing the work and moving the dirt.
Moving the dirt. I love
moving
that.
the dirt. And in 2018, this is also through Jenna, which was really great. She has such a great sort of network of people, and she put me in touch with this company that was working with billboards, digital billboards. And I met the team, and I was like, hey guys, like this is what I'm trying to do. So they hooked me up with some LG screens, which was really cool. And then one of the founders, he sent me this article in 2018 about this JPEG rose that was fractionalized on the blockchain and sold for $1 million. And I was like, okay, blockchain, crypto, what is that? How did that work? What did that mean? What is fractionalizing? Which is basically essentially like 5 companies came together and pooled the money to buy this JPEG. So I was like, okay, this was 2018. Meanwhile, I'm still doing like brand campaigns and like beauty products to kind of create, like get by, and still hunting for like the area. 2019, the words Ethereum and OpenSea kind of came into like my research, but I was still not like, I still didn't sort of sit through and like, you know, do it. My brother, funnily enough, I think had already discovered OpenSea and minted work, and I keep being like, you didn't tell me about that?
How did you not give
How
me
did
the
you not
heads up,
tell me? And he was in high school, so I think he was just like messing about. And then 2020, end of 2020 is when.
And that's when it went nuclear.
It went nuclear. So it was just like, it went nuts. And it was basically end of 2020, very, like, I remember January 1st, I think I was accepted onto Clubhouse because it was an invite only. Invite only. I was like, okay. And
We all remember that Clubhouse moment when we were all at home, locked down.
Yeah, locked down and just talking. And I'd never, like, Clubhouse was just, it wasn't, the conversations were really boring to me. I was like, okay, what is this Clubhouse? Like, why do I need another social media? And then I just remember typing in the words NFT and crypto. And that was it. It was like 24/7, every day, all night, just like this huge community of artists and builders and people came and were just talking every day for like, I think it was like 3 years almost, just talking every day. It slowly started to like calm down a bit with Twitter and everyone sort of moving on to their own things, like besides Web3, most of the people, but I think there's still like this incredible core that are from the Clubhouse days that kind of, yeah.
And we've actually heard that a few times, both with guests on the show and then just in people that we've been in conversation with outside of it, that there was that alchemic moment with the Web3 community.
Yeah.
I think Clubhouse was a huge part of that, obviously, and the market obviously pumping at the time didn't hurt. But from the general populations, I think, kind of throw away assumptions about Web3. That's why we're going to get into more detail so that we can do more education and more explanation of how it actually does feed into and help the creator world and the creator economy. But I think that we all, from the outside that maybe weren't in that community and weren't in that moment, we all saw just the explosion of numbers associated with these sales on Christie's and, to your point, these fractionalized pieces. But what we rarely get to hear about is that community.
Yeah.
And what I've seen since is the community building aspect. Even so many people are launching tokens right now, you know, left and right. And the ability to kind of activate a community of people around one of those tokens. Mm-hmm. It's unlike a lot of other populations. Right now, I think. And that's where it's so beautiful because, again, the point of the show is to help create a community of creators who have similar interests, but that can feel that connection to each other and that can be part of that moment together, right?
Yeah. So we were every day, every night, just literally talking on Clubhouse. I think I lost like 20 pounds. We were reminding each other, drink water, eat food. It was so, like, it was really crazy and intense.
Wow.
So
I literally have chills just hearing you say that.
It was like, you lost yourself in that world. I spent about 3 months really educating myself and talking to people before I even minted. Minted is this word when you upload your work or your token or whatever onto the blockchain. So like hindsight, I would say 2020 to 22, end of 22 was this crazy, you're hearing, like the media went insane. And I think what I would love to try and do is kind of reshift perspective and rebrand what, you know, NFT means, because it has such a kind of like almost grungy feeling. Like all you hear is like, oh, Jake Paul bought an NFT for $1 million and it's worth 50.
Yeah.
Now, like $50. And that's definitely one element of it. And that's what's crazy. But I think the community of artists and collectors and builders, to me, it's like this, you know, you hear it often, like it's this art renaissance, but I can just imagine what it was like, you know, in the 20s and in the modern art movement, you know, when art was being pushed forward, it feels like this. And I get to be, you know, talking with artists and, you know, these really incredible people. And I'm like, I never like to compare, but like I'm talking to the next Picasso, I'm talking to the next, you know, Peggy Guggenheim. And yeah, I think that revolution is just, it's game changing. So I want to kind of pull down this, you know, dirty feeling of like, oh, you work in crypto, like there's such degenerates. And it's like, totally, yes, there's that element, but the strong community is like still a bubble of artists. Yeah.
And it's, to your point, I think, it has this reputation of maybe being like a bro society now or something of that nature. But to your point, I love that you have this kind of eternal perspective of going from antiquity, and a lot of the artists that you were studying. It's so interesting to me that they were Caravaggio and these the people that wrangled light for the first time in that way, right? And that repainted, no pun intended, how we view each other in the world.
Yeah.
And to your point, with these kinds of, there's only so many times in the timeline of the earth that we see society band together to do something new. Yeah. And when that is harnessed through the lens of creativity, I think that it's one of the most extremely powerful growth spurts we have.
Totally.
So I love to hear that. And I have more questions about the Web3 experience and you're part of it, but I still want to make sure we're capturing as much as possible. And I know that you had a piece even at Christie's at one point that you were. So can you tell us through a little bit about your first experience exhibiting and your first experience actually having your artwork be attributed to you and be in this traditional art world realm?
Yes.
Being received by that traditional art world realm, but being to some degree fueled by these future technologies.
Totally. So I'll rewind to like 2019 because I think this was a really pivotal moment for me. I was like, okay, I'm getting a following. I have a really clear aesthetic. Let me try and find an art agent. Let me try to find someone to promote me. I need to can't be doing everything myself. So I had posted on Instagram, asked anyone if they knew someone. I got a few DMs and I reached out to them. And the only person who picked up was this guy. And I was explaining to him, like, this is, the work, this is the vision, it's moving, it's going to be digital. And he kind of was like, yeah, you're onto something, it's cool, but like, I don't quite understand it. And I only represent, established artists. And for me, when I heard that, I was like, okay, you only represent established artists. I'm going to build my whole career off of that sentence because just wait. Like, just wait. So that was like, I was like a dog with a bone. I'm like, okay. And that was kind of, I don't remember if it's Jordan or who's the football player everyone loves, Tom Brady. And I noticed that I do this too. I kind of create like obstacles or like rivals from something just to give me that like extra push. And he was that for me. Like he really just gave me that fuel. And I would say 2021 was my first collaboration, my big first collaboration. So minted some work, had it sell, which was incredible. And then Playboy came.
Okay.
Playboy came to me and said, hey, we love your artwork. We'd love to do a collaboration for an NFT event in Miami. And so...
And they came to you.
They came to me, which was...
Mr. Art Agent is like shaking.
Like, I really hope that just one of those moments where it's like, okay. And Playboy came to me, wanted to do a collaboration. So it was very clearly Ayla times Playboy. They did with 6 artists. That basically like shot me into this incredible wave in 2021 where, you were minting work and it was getting received, it was getting sold, and it was really wild and it was really intense. But I would say somehow luck or like that gut instinct was really telling me, people, artists and collectors were really telling me, raise your prices.
Okay.
Double your price. Like I was selling for, it started slowly. It was like, 1 ETH had, a couple sales at 1 ETH. Then, I raised it up a little bit and continued to kind of like raise the prices. But people were saying, raise them, like go double digits, which was an insane amount.
Which is what, like 10 Ethereum?
Yeah. So 10 Ethereum, which back in 2021 was like 60,000 or something. So it was just something crazy, and I was working my way up gently. Like the Playboy piece sold for 6 ETH, which was incredible. And then, my next few pieces were 6, 7 ETH. And they were, they kept going, go double, go double. And something in me, it wasn't the fact that I didn't believe in myself or didn't feel like I was worth it, but I was like, let me just go slow. Like this is long term for me. Let me just go slow. And I think now that was such a blessing in disguise because you're seeing artists who came in crazy hot and blazing, which was great because they were getting paid, but selling for 70, 80, 90 ETH and they can't even sell for like 0.5. So it's this this definite balance of like, what are you trying to do? What's the vision? What's the long-term goal? But it was game-changing for artists because we removed the art agents, we removed the galleries. It was basically this straight pathway and connecting to artist collector. And that was so powerful.
Yeah. To your point, to echo that same thing. My background is in journalism, and it's important to remember that if you actually do hope to be on a public scale with your art and you hope to be somebody that people write about one day, they do pay attention to those milestones. They're like, oh, they sold for this much, and then there's crickets. So I think one of the things we've talked about in this room in the past is the importance of sometimes being willing to work for free at the beginning and to build your portfolio hungrily and humbly and making sure that you actually are producing something of value, you're finding your market fit, and you have a plan for when you want to monetize. And that feeds into the whole feast or famine type of narrative. But I think to your point, it's so interesting to say that if you are able to scale to that point, be mindful of the long game and of always wanting to grow versus wanting to have some type of crazy amount once.
And that's it.
And then nothing. Because as an artist, to go from wildly successful to like somebody that people aren't willing to buy anything from. that can be devastating.
Terrifying.
It can also catalyze like a rebirth. We do know that.
Totally. I mean, there's incredible artists, like I would say traditional artists, who that's how they move, and it's very much that like those high sales are what drive it. So, like Jeff Koons, obviously, Damien Hirst are incredible branders of art, and they're kind of that tabloid price is what moves. And of course, psychologically, like there's mimetic desire that people are always obsessed with, right? So if someone else has it, I want it, and if I can't get it, I need it even more.
Yeah.
If you sell for $1 million and your career is like 2 years old, where do you go?
Where do you go?
Where do you go from there?
Because there's as far as I'm aware of, there's increasingly more artists than there's ever been. Because as we saw, the pandemic was this great stabilizer of people. The economy blew up, but like the people, we were all brought down to the same directions of stay at home and like sit pretty for a second while we figure out what's going on. Don't see each other. Don't go out and gather. And in that time, I personally know so many, it's one of the impetuses of this show. I know so many people who found their creative opportunity, who had never had it. The people that were accountants, the people that were in HR, the people that their career had relied so heavily on non-creative output that became their opportunity to explore it. And then some of them were able to just literally change forever in that way.
Totally.
And one of the things that you mentioned also that was so interesting to me was the fact that art agents know became the like compulsion to create for you even better, because with artists, the temperament is often driven by passion. It's often driven by the things we love. And it's so beautiful and rare when you have the thing that's driving you be good encouragement. But when it's somebody not believing in you, or when it's somebody telling you, no, not yet.
Yeah.
You have two opportunities, right? You either have the opportunity to prove them wrong and to do it, or you have the opportunity to take that and let it crush your spirit.
Totally.
And it's funny because I had something somewhat similar when I was 18 years old. My grandpa was an illustrator for Disney. He was an incredible visual artist, and my brother is also. And I had never spent much time sketching or painting or doing anything of that nature, but I had done it for like school assignments here and there, and I realized I was able to transfer what I saw on a screen. I was able to usually recreate it on the page, but I didn't have that visual ideation in my mind of something that I could transfer to the page. Yeah. Kind of what you described. And I remember I had these best friends at the time that were two guys who were like getting tatted every single week, and they were obsessed with artwork. And I remember we walked into the tattoo parlor one day, and there was this incredible piece of artwork on the wall, and they both were kind of like stunned by it. It was a Dia de los Muertos sugar skull that had like a mustache, and I wish I could remember the name of the artist. But I remember they were just like sitting there with their jaws open, being like, "This is such an incredible painting." Yeah. And I looked at them, and I said it wasn't ego. It was just, I feel like I could probably do that for, like, make something like that for you. And they're like, "No, you can't. There's no way." And I remember going home and doing it that night. Yeah. And from that moment on, I kept creating for like 3 years. Gorgeous. It's been a very long time since I've been able to paint. And then one of our previous guests, Erica, she is always begging me to paint more. She's my old roommate and best friend. But that lit a fire under me to do something that felt like an inheritance almost. Yeah. And it had taken me 18 years to even feel like I could just do anything with it, right?
It's this, I always find it's this like funny dance between like ego. It's someone else is informing, be it, yes, that's amazing, or no, you can't. And I always feel like no, you can't is far more fuel than yes, that's amazing. But it's sort of this weird thing that I find as an artist where it's, you need your ego. Ego is in like that driver to be like, I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to show the world, like, I believe this is good enough. And I know there's that, that saying that's, sort of this hallmark, if you don't believe in yourself, like, why would anyone else want to? And then that almost like imposter syndrome of looking at others and comparing and being like, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't post this. So I think it's that like beautiful, in that middle zone. And I was just thinking about it the other day too. Like imposter syndrome doesn't need to be an enemy. I think it's that thing that keeps you humble, it keeps you motivated, and it keeps you wanting to do your best work. Why isn't that an amazing friend? So I think that soul crushing, ego crushing is great. And I also think that, you know, are a great sort of marriage of two elements as an artist.
Oh, absolutely. And to your point, like in the corporate world, in my experience there, imposter syndrome amongst women,
oh my God,
it permeates every level. And I don't know about you, but I would spend more time in my day trying to convince myself I had earned a seat and like overthinking, even when I'd be in a meeting with 7 or 8 men who I knew I was prepared. I knew I had a great idea. I knew I had a great plan. My throat would close up.
Yeah.
Because, and you know, I don't find that it grips men just fundamentally the same way it grips women. And so to some degree, yes, I think we villainized it because it's this narrative of why don't we have that belief, that core belief, that like primal understanding that we belong in the room and our voice matters. But to your point, it always kept me hungry. It always, even in this seat here at this podcast, like I spent so much time overthinking whether or not I'd be able to do it.
Yeah.
And to your point, there's a certain amount of maybe natural talent that can turn on. And it also, that grit and that determination and that commitment to do your best, because it's about more than you at that point.
Yeah.
Right? I think that there is a beautiful side to that. So I'm so glad you put it that way. I want to talk a little bit about your actual style because it is so stunning and so unique. Tell us a little bit about where I know that you have this trajectory of going through photography and brand placement or working with brands as a photographer, and then obviously developing it over time.
Yeah.
But can you tell us how that really came together at the point that Ayla's art was the main goal?
It was definitely 2020, end of 2020, when I really kind of put everything down and I was like, I'm focusing on this now. And that's, again, that 21 was where the autonomy and kind of that fuel of getting paid for your artwork and saying someone likes that vision and they want to spend money. It's still so surreal to me when a collector is like, I'm going to buy that. Or I have that sale, or you get that email being like, oh, someone minted your work and bought that piece. And I don't think it ever is going to get old. And early on, there was almost this like, again, I wouldn't say self-doubt, but this, you want to over-please and be like, you know, maybe I'll give you a gift. Maybe I'll do you that, or give you a free work. And that's something where I would say, don't do that. Never. I don't want to ever give advice like, don't do that. But I think, really believe these are artworks. There's a creative exchange happening. And just because they're giving you dollars or Ethereum or whatever form of payment doesn't make you beholden to give them more. Like, there's an exchange. They're willingly buying your work. That's what I would say is when it changed, when I had my first sale in 2021. Someone paid, I think it was like 1 ETH. It was $4,000. And they were like, I love that work. I'm going to buy it. And that changed everything. And then it was like, okay, this is how we go. This is how we build. This is how we, let me create this campaign for my art and, really start to, figure out where I want to go, how I want to be seen, you're online. You're on the blockchain, which means you're forever online. So unless there's some catastrophic, event and the world doesn't exist anymore, your artwork, your statements, everything will be forever recorded. And so you have to think about that. What am I trying to say? How am I trying to say it? Like, try and think as long term as you can. Of course, you leave room for, the creative spirit and the creative muse. But do I really want that piece to be online? Does that say what I want it to say? Does that fit where I'm trying to go? And then it was about 3. So I would say that very Ayla aesthetic. So I have a very surreal kind of canvas, if you will. So there's a moving wave. There's always a female form. And there's always usually some type of nature. And I basically pounded that in. Like, this is, the more people see something, the more it's like a confirmation. So I was like, okay, this is Ayla. This is my niche. I've carved it out. This is what I want people to see. And I would, make different deviations, different, artworks, but it was very much that same formula, if you will. And then 23 is when I started to, and we can talk about it, nude abstracts with the ChatGPT interview.
Oh my gosh, we have a good one. Just stay tuned. Keep going, please.
But that, I feel like I always say it's going to be Ayla post nude abstracts and Ayla pre nude abstracts. Because,
okay, so you see it as only a certain moment in time.
Yeah, it was kind of,
or was it a transition where it's going to be forever that way?
Kind of. It was more like I added more tools to the arsenal, and I kind of wanted the outputs to be a little bit more almost physical, almost like a bit more painterly, because if you look at the old work, it's very much photography, video, which is what it was. And now I've added digital paint, physical pieces, kind of all of this different, the word is losing me.
Like mediums, right?
Thank you. Yeah. Different mediums that are
Media.
all into one piece. So like there's so many layers. But that was after nude abstracts.
Yeah. To those that might be listening or watching this, you have to go check out her art. It is so insane. AylaElMoussa.com, right?
Yeah.
That's the website. We'll have it linked, of course. But go there right now and look up these galleries that she has, because it's truly like a century clash. The fact that you have such inspiration actively informing your art from antiquity, and that you're bringing it onto the blockchain is just beyond cool to me. But they're these gorgeous pieces that truly are transcend time and space, I believe. And such an interesting element of that, which I do want us to touch on, is that you have captured the female form so gorgeously. And I know that even when we're talking about imposter syndrome, like there are so many different pressures put on women to present a certain way, to dress a certain way, to be revealing yourself in a certain way or not, to represent yourself as if you're the business person behind your art. Well, then are you allowed to be the model in these nude self-portraits?
Yeah.
And I think that your art is such a perfect, hell yeah, you are to that. So tell us what that experience is like, to be your own model and to be that vulnerably expressed. Has it made you even more powerful in your art, would you say? Are there moments you're really battling with it?
It's interesting. We were kind of touching on this before, where it's like I almost become someone else. So it's like I'm creating these pieces, and of course I'm not wearing clothes. And there's a reason for that. There's a very like specific reason. One, I love the female form. Every artwork that I've gravitated towards is usually a nude woman. And there's something so timeless about nudity, because you can't date that. You can't be like, oh, she's wearing, John Galliano circa 2010. Like it's totally timeless. And then if you look, I would say I've been very specific that you don't normally see my face in the artwork. It's usually from the back or from the side. I think there's like maybe 3 pieces that I've done where you see a gentle side profile. But that's all very purposely done, because I don't want it to be Ayla. I kind of want it to be, as I've dubbed her, like it's her. She's the muse, if you will. And a collector did a tweet, like, how do you know when your artwork is finished? I was like, because I won't see myself in it anymore.
So much. Like, drop the mic. Yeah,
but it's so off camera, I'm so like, it's super shy. And if someone else wants to take my photograph, it's a train wreck. Like, it just does not work. But when I'm in front of the camera and I know I'm alone and I'm in my studio and I'm doing my thing, it's a whole other side that comes out, which is really, really interesting. It's not always perfect, and there's definitely tricks, and you learn along the way, like studying models and looking at the great, how they do it. You learn to kind of position in that magic. And for me, a lot of people say, art comes from pain and it needs to be like, I need to be in this like throes of sorrow. And for me, I can't work when it's like that.
Yeah.
Like I need to be in a really good mindset. I need to feel good and then I'll create. And it's usually like the cadence is usually long periods of, I would say like digestion and like hibernation. And then these like short spurts of like crazy creativity. And then I go back kind of to my sofa with my cats and then edit everything on the computer.
I have so many questions. Okay, so the first one is, I know that with that nude element of your artwork,
Yeah.
you've had some interesting experiences, including one that you mentioned to me
Yeah.
that happened in the Middle East,
Yeah.
where nudity is policed, we'll say.
Yeah, totally. It's totally forbidden. And I did it for 2 works. It was early on. And I was on a family trip. And I'm not going to say where. But we were in this incredible space of sand dunes. And that was a lot of my early artwork was, waves, sand, that dynamic conversation between waves and sand and dry and wet, all of that stuff. And I set up the camera and I shot in the Middle East. And there was no one for miles. So I knew it was okay. But had anybody come or had anyone seen or had something had happened, it would have been very serious. So there was that risk element a little bit because normally I'm, in Death Valley or I'm in Joshua Tree. I'm kind of very Western safe.
Yeah.
But to do it there, that was something. And that art piece is called Sands of Time. The collector who collected it is a really, really great mind. And he kind of, he saw that vision and
Did he value the risk that was
he
in
valued
place?
the risk.
Yes.
It was it's funny because I don't like to talk about it. So I'm like, who's going to listen or who's going to hear? But it's also part of my heritage. So I feel like there's some comfort and some like, let me shoot in the Middle East. But yeah, I feel like
if a tree drops in the forest and no one's there to see it.
Exactly.
I mean, did that shoot happen?
If she takes off her clothes in the desert.
So one of my other questions was, when we were chatting earlier, you gave such a beautiful example of what it means to have sovereignty over your artwork, right? Which is that ideally, in an ideal universe, you have the creative vision, you have the creative flow state, you execute your art, and you're able to maintain control all the way through the sale, all the way through future usage. Like that's the ideal. Obviously, traditional systems buck that completely and want to have as many middlemen as possible. And obviously, there's a lot of ways in which trying to have that much sovereignty becomes overbearing to some people. But you have such an interesting rhythm where you start as the model, it sounds like. And then you go through, you just said you do everything yourself, the video, the motion, the photo, the editing, you even do the
Painting.
You do the painting. There's so much to it. And I think you said you take it all the way through printing, all the way up until printing.
Yeah.
Yes. So tell us what that's like. Did you know from the beginning you needed to have that end-to-end involvement? Was that something you learned along the way? Or is it something that just naturally kind of developed and has worked well for you?
I think it's the naturally developed. That word you said at the beginning, I think control is a huge part of it. Because it was kind of awkward because I was shooting other models and I was feeling, it was a beautiful collaboration. I'd shoot models, I'd create a beautiful editorial, but I would always feel really strange asking them to sign a model release and then having to sell that. It never sat right in my gut. Like, yes, they've given me the release. Even if I split the cost, it's still somehow not fully mine. That's not to say, creators and photographers and artists who use others, that's like hats off. I think also fundamentally I'm terrified of like paperwork. So I think that element kicks in and then just, you have full control. You have full, like, every mistake you make is your mistake fully and you can own it. Every success is like fully your success. That's not to say that I don't need help. Like there's definitely moments where I'm like, I need help. I need someone to like PR me or do this or do that because it gets a lot. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's really like you.
And earlier you mentioned the people in the art space that like are magicians at branding for artists, right? Did you have to really develop that on your brand yourself? And in that sense, how did you go about, beyond the canvas or beyond the portrait, how did you go about figuring out what Ayla's brand looked like?
I think it's all just like looking at others that I admire and like who does it well, and like let me look at how a Vogue editorial looks. Let me look at how a Vanity Fair editorial looks. Let me look at how Prada in 1995 did this campaign for a bag. And that's just like, I would say, images that I've been drawn to. And then I ask why. Like, why do I really love this editorial, this ad campaign? And then, I mean, everybody now creates incredible campaigns. But I think as an artist, there's almost this like, I don't want to say taboo, but it's almost an extra extension of yourself where you have to brand and you have to like do it. And having like doing a brand, like seeing the image from the beginning, executing the vision, having it printed or having it up, then doing the ad campaign and like promoting it. Like when you see that all through from start to finish, it's amazing. It's so rewarding. It also like gut hurts when you like put your heart and soul into something and then no one sees it and it's crickets, but I'm still really proud of it, you know? So
It still exists because of you.
Totally. And you can always go back and see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing ever needs to stay asleep forever. There are ways to just usher it awake.
Totally.
Like you in that midday nap when you had that clarity.
Yeah. I need another one soon.
Speaking of Vogue, we alluded to it earlier. There is this incredible, I don't know why, as a writer, as a journalist, it drew my eye so much when I was doing research over you. But she did this thing that maybe other people have done it. I don't know. It seems incredibly rare and genius that rather than just, so many people are using ChatGPT for their content creation. And a lot of the time it's really obvious.
Totally. Like there's like 3 words now in the art world. It's like the, usually profound.
Okay.
You're like, okay, ChatGPT wrote that. Intersection is the new one now. The intersection between this and this. You're like, okay, ChatGPT wrote it. Yeah, you can.
That's good to know because I used to use that one a lot.
Intersection?
In my own, like.
Which is fine if you started, but I think now like ChatGPT like learns and then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Especially when people you don't like who weren't writing profound, like who you're a writer, so of course you can.
But no, it's good to know the things that are not passing the sniff test anymore, right?
Yeah.
We have to evolve. But what you did was rather than just like funnel stuff into ChatGPT and leverage it to flesh out, your business and your content, you had ChatGPT interview you as a Vogue editorial. And the final piece was gorgeous.
Thank you.
And so where did that idea come from real quick?
Just reading. So it was reading magazines, and also I wanted someone to interview me, and I couldn't find anybody. This project I was so proud of this project. I need someone to interview me. I really want there to be a PR piece. And no one replied my DMs. I emailed to magazines, online people. No one said anything. And no one replied my email. So I was like, do it myself.
Just do it yourself.
Just do it myself. It took some time. Like it took some time. You kind of have to like
train them.
You kind of had to train it. But this was before chat was trainable.
Oh,
so this was like early 2023. So it was like you basically just ask it questions like, okay, so this is, you give it your spiel and then you say, interview me in the style of a Vanity Fair article, interview me in the style of a Vogue article, interview me in the style of GQ. You basically ask it to give you that voice and then you can pick and choose the questions and kind of build it. And I was proud of that because I was like, it's such a cool use case. And because the space I'm in is so techy, like there's a lot of tech people. So having that fashion element was really fun because it was really just a fun.
Well, even the ChatGPT element, like when I saw it, because you call it out, you say, this is an article written by ChatGPT.
Yep.
And to me, it was almost this moment of self-awareness for your space. Because of course, ChatGPT should be interviewing Web3 artists. Yeah. Of course it should.
Yeah.
Right? And what I also love about that is earlier we spoke about the importance of having sovereignty over your art and over your process. And the fact that you did the work and the effort of getting the coverage organically from humans.
Yeah.
And I'm sure so many people that will hear this conversation have allowed, including myself, have allowed those no's sometimes to seemingly give you the litmus test that maybe this isn't something worth coverage.
Yeah.
But when you just take the ownership of it and have it, and then that lives now forever with your gallery, you're just like, I'm even controlling the way that this is going to be seen.
Yeah.
Not in a way that's, manipulative or putting a lens on it that maybe it doesn't have, but in a way that just says, I don't need that person to say yes, because they will. It's the art. It's the art agent. Like,
Vogue, please. Yes, call me. No,
Vanity Fair, give this girl.
please. But yeah, totally true.
Oh, I love it so much.
And I think just as a thought, it gives you a different way to think. Like we kind of put things in boxes, I would say, and you kind of have this, I need this and that, but it's so useful. Like you can, there's nothing you can't do.
There's nothing you can't do in 2024.
No.
I mean, just to be in the West, where we are relatively safe right now, in the midst of so much turmoil in this globe, to have such access with our phones and our tablets and our internet to create, to explore, to research, to learn, to leverage every type of tool and technology to our benefit for free more often than not.
Yeah.
Like I've always said, it's just, I've said this to myself. There's no excuse.
No.
You have the universal you can do anything now.
Yeah.
And that might have been true when we were kids and our parents said that, and but this means like, no, actually you can.
You really can
do anything.
Yeah.
And you can have, if you need to, you can be the artist to tell AI to do it for you. But there's a way to do that even with artistry.
Yeah.
And there's so much, there are so many artists in the Web3 space, I think, that have been leveraging, what is it? It's Midjourney.
Yeah.
To just make some of the most incredible images of humans that come from their imagination.
Yeah.
That would be challenging to actually execute in real life.
Totally.
But give us this whole new perception of the human experience.
And it's tools. I think that's like the big capital T tools, where it's like, don't let it use you. And if you're using ChatGPT, like you can still edit it and change it to make it you. Like you don't need to just copy paste, right? Like use these as incredible tools to like make your vision, even ask you questions. Like you can get it to test your knowledge, give you a test on whatever it is you're interested in. Like you can use it to your benefit too.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And that's the tension we're at right now, right? As artists, it's like there's this huge cultural narrative that AI is going to cannibalize art. And in some ways it has, and in some ways that's true, but we've seen multiple times in these interviews that there is also a really beautiful marriage between the creative mind and the creative tools. To just, we're only alive for so long. Yeah. We only have so many hours in the day. We only have so many moments to get into a flow state and create. Yeah. Right? And that's such that like magical moment that can be so elusive depending on the person and their process, that if you can learn how to tap in. That was one of my follow-up questions real quick about the Web3, as somebody that we've discussed the community aspect of it. We've discussed the financial aspect of it and how it's been attached to artwork and to auction houses and to things of that nature. But can you describe a little bit for the Web 2 world creators, the ones that have been using the traditional systems, the Photoshop, the Premiere, the social media platforms, YouTube, etc., to be publishing and promoting their work? Is there a need for those creators to learn and adapt in some way with Web 3? And if so, what are the easiest ways to get started doing that?
Yes, because I really feel it's the future. There's two answers that are right. Like these Web 2 and Web 3 can coexist. I think there seems to be this weird like battle going where it's like if you're in Web 3, it's sort of F Web 2, and if you're fully Web 2, it's F Web 3. And I think there's this total kind of symbiotic thing that will eventually happen. I will touch base very gently on some Web 2 things that have kind of permeated into Web 3. So for example, like the auction houses and certain galleries, they're really seeing that there is like blockchain is the future, not just for art. I think art is always the first incredible use case, but I think you're going to be able to sell your car through the blockchain. You can, if you want to create your video, you can upload it to the blockchain and it doesn't need to be on YouTube. Like you can use what you need to. I think there is always a place for Web 2 creators in Web 3, for sure, and vice versa. Learning, that's where it gets tricky because there's so much crazy out there. I would say find the community and don't be afraid to ask. So it's hard to find the community. So you kind of have to like dive into, NFTs and blockchain. But I feel most people in that space, probably via X or Twitter, are super happy to share. And once you just ask one person and they give you a little bit of info, it will, set you on that incredible trail to find what you need to. But they are like a lot of these foundations and places that before were saying no are now going, hang on a second, okay, this is actually interesting. This is here to stay. So you're seeing galleries and institutions, MoMA, for example, which is a very institution, like modern art place, who I think when NFTs came into the scene was like, oh, what is this? This is bad for the environment, I think is something that's being touted as a deterrent. But I think there's so much advancement in the technology that,
the mining has
I think so.
stabilized.
I would say, I don't know so much deeply. I can't get in.
We're back there I'm always like, are there tools?
Cannot confirm. Don't take me. But I think it's just like, there's so much that's being developed and you're not going to get away with it. Like the wave is coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just are you prepared for it?
Yeah.
Or is it going to drown you?
Yeah, totally. Ride it.
And also it sounds like, again, I'm not a Web3 expert by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, but I have been curiously kind of orbiting it for the last year or so. And it sounds like beyond new types of tools and technologies that are enabled by Web3 that can unlock new versions of creativity.
Yeah.
Again, it has that immutable record on the blockchain, which speaks to the eternal struggle with art about ownership and about being able to rightly say that that is mine. I created that.
Totally.
So I think that there's that benefit, of course. And then it also seems that it's just intrinsically linked to monetization. And that's not the truth for art in the traditional Web 2 pre-internet world.
Yeah.
Forever, art has been in some way, I think, undervalued for a lot of people. Not for every artist. There's definitely the artists that people will always pay top dollar to see. But for the majority, I think, especially those that are discovering their style, monetization either comes later, comes lower than they might expect it, or to your point with the earlier statement, they might have a splash as soon as they hit the scene and then drought for the rest of their career. And so I think that from an outside layperson perspective, Web3 enables so much more of that ownership, control, like you said, and ultimately income for it.
Just caveat really quickly. We think of these artists that were being paid top dollar in auction houses. Like you think of Van Gogh. I don't think Van Gogh made much in his life.
No.
And there's many artists, like there was some that had, patronage. If you think about like Da Vinci and Michelangelo, there's a lot of artists who've had patronage, but also there's a lot that have not been paid. Like I'm getting paid, even if it's $1,000, somebody is paying me while I'm alive money for my art. I think that's never happened before. I don't think so. That's huge.
You're absolutely right. The trend for so long was that it's the post-mortem appreciation.
Totally.
And again, it goes back to that point of there's never been a better time because you could be a teenager tinkering at home and make more in that day than a lot of people might see in their life, honestly, if you're looking at the global perspective.
Totally.
And so that's exciting.
Yes.
And it's something that
there's nothing wrong with it either.
No.
I feel like there's there's a gentle stigmatization. I think that's why there was this huge boom in Web3 where it was like, I shouldn't be promoting, I shouldn't be making money as an artist. Like, again, I have to suffer. There's like, this idea of starving artist, I think needs to change a little bit. There needs to shift in that perspective because, again, we have all of these tools to give yourself a platform so that you don't need to starve. And if it's a sacred thing that you do in your studio, that's totally fine as well. Like, you don't need to get paid, but you totally have the option to now.
Absolutely.
And I don't think there's ever been a time in history where you have real live fed artists who are making millions of dollars. Like, that's huge.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So there's so much hope.
There's so much hope. Like, there's a lot of doom and gloom, but I'm very much of rebranding this what Web3 is, or how the outside Web2 look at it. Like, there's so much hope. There's so, like, you can really take full control of every aspect. And also you can find collaborators too. I think the community in Web3 is really, really, we're all like eager to help.
Oh, yeah. I love that so much. What is next for you at this point?
Yeah.
What is it?
What is it? What's interesting is, I would say, after 3 years of a very recognizable Ayla aesthetic, in June I had a show at Christie's. The piece was physical.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm still pinching myself like this wasn't real. It was really wild. It was hanging in their gallery at 20 Rock. And that to me was a great pivotal moment too, for an aesthetic change, a little evolution, if you will. So gently working through that. I'm a snail. I take a long time to fully decide like what the direction is. And then once I go, it's like
Also
blinders.
full steam ahead.
Yeah, full steam ahead. Like, just go. So I think right now I'm working on a couple new series, but I'm flipping the idea. So most people, when they create a body of work, it's kind of under a one theme. So it'll be like, let's just say waves is one theme. And then you create 5 or 6, however big your series is, under that frame, under that title. I'm taking this idea, which I'm really excited about, and nobody's heard about it yet, so I'm excited to share.
We're the first.
Woohoo! Is I'm taking one image of, and it's going to be repeated. Think like Andy Warhol, but a little bit different. So it's going to be the same image, and I'm going to create probably 6 different works under that, with that same picture and different themes.
Okay.
So there'll be like a theme of censorship, which is a big thing for me on Instagram and Twitter, or X, getting censored. So that's going to be one theme, and I'm going to use the same image over and over again to create 3 different artworks. And then another one will be the idea of color. And how do I work with nude color in 3 different ways using the same image. So that's kind of, I don't know if you understand. Does that make sense?
No, I do. I love that.
So
that's what's coming up next.
That's what's coming up next.
Yay.
Yeah.
And is that something that people, how can they see when that's ready? Is the easiest way for them to just be following along on your site? Is it on your socials? Socials.
Still, we're still tied to Web2.
We're just still doing it.
But yeah, that's where I'll start to like roll it out and campaign it and share.
Well, you also brought up one last quick, I know we're almost at time, but one of the other things that you just brought up that's so interesting is we've seen that with these traditional social media platforms that have become such a catalyst for people's careers, the algorithm doesn't like a lot of people's content, right? And even with the most tasteful nudes, you are going to be suppressed in certain ways with your content. How has that, beyond letting it inform this new series, which is so cool to me, how have you worked around that in the past when you have either been shadow banned or had something not fit within, like having the platforms get mad at it?
It's still a struggle. I don't really have like a hack that you go, because it's weird. It doesn't, what's interesting to me is like, how's the algorithm working? Because it's like, there is serious X-rated stuff on X. So you're like, holy, like, okay,
yeah,
cool. And then you post like a nude kind of back, and then it's like, no, this is not appropriate. Like, your image has been taken down. So it's this like weird play of like, I don't know, is it the machine working against the body? Like, what is happening? Don't have a hack, but I think just being able to have my work up on platforms like Super Rare or Foundation or OpenSea, where you can kind of like, at least they're not taking that down, which is like, these are the Web3 platforms.
Yes.
But I don't know. It's still a battle. It's ongoing. I have no hack other than just keep posting.
Just keep posting.
Just keep posting.
Yeah.
Because eventually it will just either you catch something or you'll just train it.
Yeah.
Like,
Truly.
just train it. Try at least.
Try. Try.
It's wild though, because I had a piece. It was literally just a wave, like a moving wave, and it was censored. Like, this is inappropriate content. So I'm like, I don't know how they're deciding.
How it's being flagged.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So
this has been such a great conversation. In my mind, I think that we've covered most of the things that we had wanted to touch on. But for those that are just really having their first exposure to you and to your mind and to your artwork, is there any last bit of your journey or your style or your philosophy that we haven't touched on that you want to include?
To imbue, there really isn't. I think this has been amazing. You've asked such great questions.
Oh,
this has been so fun. Normally, I don't do too many podcasts. So
I'm so grateful you did ours, because this was, I always can feel it in the room when it's a fun conversation, and hopefully it translates to those that are watching at home. So thank you again for being here. I can't wait to stay tuned. Your handles for people to follow you on socials.
Super easy. First name dot last name. So Ayla El Moussa.
Okay. We'll have it in the description as well, Ayla.El Moussa. And that's the same on all of them. Yeah. And then your website again, aylaelmoussa.com. Thank you for those of you at home that have been tuning into this conversation. Thank you for those that have been tuning into every conversation. I can't tell you how much it means to us to be able to show up every week and do our best to be a resource and to make the creative journey a little less lonely and a little bit more lovely, right? Like, that's the goal.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. So again, thank you so much. If you aren't already, please go ahead and hit subscribe. I only say that so that you can be notified when we do post new episodes and you don't have to look around to find out if we have one dropping. Also, please feel free to let us know in the comments in any of the platforms. We watch every single thing that we post through. If you have ideas for content you want to see, if you have guests that you think would be a fit, if you have topics that you really want us to dig into or struggles that you're going through that you need answers to, we will make sure that we are including those for you as best as we can, because again, the number one goal is you guys. And I'm so grateful for the amazing guests that are part of that journey with us. So we'll be back again next week, and I hope you all have a wonderful time. Until then, be kind to yourself, be kind to each other, and we'll see you in a week.